So share my screen. I hope this is visible.
Yes.
Yeah. So for the, I would like to thank all the professors, especially Madam and Director Sir, for inviting me for this today's session. And I'm really happy to know that this webinar series is being organized at Geetham University, where special focus is there on research paper writing for the benefit of students. And it's a very good a thing to see, because in today's time a focus towards research is gradually growing and growing, and it's not just academics, but now it's research also. So it becomes very, I think, pertinent to know how to involve oneself in the research. And it is best to teach students how to do this. So in that line itself, I have chosen this today's topic, research literature study through case study approach. So how to go for case studies? Well, case studies are a very familiar thing in architecture. That's why I chose this, because they can relate directly. But yeah, there is a lot actually in depth in the case study approach, like how to go about it, and there are some advantages, disadvantages, and merits, demerits that we will discuss. So I'll quickly begin. So going to touch, there are 7 chapters. First one, conduct any typical architectural research, just that part. So that is very normal. I'm sure all the PhD students who have done their research methodology course, they may be knowing it already. But just to give a a brief in just few minutes, define your research topic so that you know what you are going to do, because a lot of time takes in pinpointing the research a topic, what you are going to undertake. Once that is defined, you just assume half of the work is done. What you need to do is just to define your objectives and move on to solving those objectives, analyzing, synthesizing, and you are done. So the first step is the very important step. Second, review existing literature. So this is where case studies actually come into the picture, and yeah, many other material like studying the standards, studying the site, all of those things. Establishing a research objectives. So one research aim gets divided into a few research objectives. Okay, and gradually in the process of our research, we try solving them. Before solving them, you need to understand what methods to apply. So the second, the next most important thing comes is the research methods. Okay, so based on your a topic, the kind of objectives it has, the kind of resources which are available, you are going to define or choose your research method. Then you will be going for collecting your own data, primary data analysis and all that. Finally, analyzing them, interpreting the findings, that is synthesis part, drawing recommendations, conclusions, where you can make sense of those things, and finally documenting and sharing it with everyone. So this is a typical a research method. Next comes some tips and techniques for writing a research paper. This also I have kept it very generic, because this can be true for the people, students who are doing research in some other areas also. Okay, so very generic tips and techniques under this head is going to understand the assignment. So just remember, in the first section we spoke of overall a research, like a thesis or a big project. In the second one here, we are talking about one single a paper. So you have to understand that pinpointed assignment or the task, what you are going to undertake into that, and it should be very, very pinpointed and zoomed in. Okay, the moment you zoom out, you start seeing a number of things, but in a paper you have to zoom in. Okay, so it has to be very, very pinpointed and a specific. Choose a focused research topic on which you are going to do this, then conduct through research, Okay, like refer to the journals and books, like conference papers, published, like reports, data sets, scholarly, like resources, like videos, like case studies, all of those, like things. Okay, and then you develop your own clear, like a thesis statement, like what is this hypothesis you are going to kind of do. So that hypothesis you will be testing it, whether it is getting proved or disproven or whatever. So all of the arguments, which will come, around that will actually create the piece of knowledge, right? And then finally creating an outline, writing, writing the whole, like a narration point by point. All of those points should be like interconnected and should come in a flow. The writing style has to be very, very kind of a clear and concise, not too much of elaboration, but not kind of a very little also. So, but you have to keep in mind that you have to be very, very specific to the task and the assignment, what you are going to undertake in the research paper. Then finally, you will be coming down to the, like a evidences part, like maybe third, like a method or tool where you are going to validate, like your results, right? Finally, analyzing, interpreting the findings, concluding it, right? Then again, come back, revise and edit. If there is any like a grammatical mistake, a spelling mistake, any like a punctuation mistake, those things also. So a research paper is a very highly, like a watertight kind of, like a document, which presents a very pinpointed, research in a very efficient manner. Then very important part, like using the references and citations. Okay, so whatever, like literatures, books, studies, journal papers, etc., you have referred, it is always mandatory and recommended and desired that you mention them in your, like a literature in your paper, right? And yes, 13th point, if you see, it talks about, like a plagiarism. So plagiarism is kind of another very important thing these days, because all such, like documents actually go through, like a plagiarism checks. So one must actually not directly copy, like a things. Well, you can read them and infer them in some way in your research, but you should not directly copy them. Finally, working this whole thing in a timely, like a management, like a timely, like a manner, then seeking feedbacks, revisions, and finalizing the data. So it's a very brief, like some, like a steps, which suggest how to write a research paper. So in that, well, maybe other presenters also have, like elaborated on these. That's why I'm not keeping it to, like a detail. But from here on, I'm taking this case study, like a methods, how you can utilize, in your, like researches. So let's see some definition. What does it mean? Okay. So an empirical inquiry, that means a practical inquiry, where some real life, data is involved. Okay. So real life context, some phenomena. Okay. Then it becomes a case study. Then a method that is deliberately chosen to cover such contextual conditions. Okay. So that also kind of gives you, like like understanding that how you are going to, like make use of it. So if you see, contextual conditions is the one, like highlighted in like the point over here, right? Then to retain the holistic and meaningful characteristics of real life event, it talks about specific phenomena. Okay, so this is where case studies actually, like help us. For example, if you're going to study like institutional, like buildings in India, okay, so there may be, like hundreds and thousands of, like examples, right? And there may be a lot of commonalities, but there may be some, like a unique distinctions also, right? So how you are going to like, like analyze them, that is depends on your aim, what aim you actually targeted, and with that, like help how you are going to do this, so all of those actually case studies will help you, reaching to the, like a nuances of, like that research, right? So yeah, so case studies are actually, helpful in those kind of situations. Well, there are many other, like researchers also. You can see these references I have given over here. In this case here, like even CDM regulations, if you want to see. So mainly, like there are found like a three purposes: exploration, description, and explanation of phenomena. Okay. So these actually help, like learn, like things from the case studies, right? And it helps and understanding, like a systematic, like a description, right? Yeah. Another this thing, important thing is that it gives you a scientific validity, right? So like how things are implemented in the real life. Okay, you get to see them, you get to measure them also. For example, like a ventilation or heat component or any such things, if you want to measure, you can go to the like a buildings or like those spaces, and you can put your tools there and you can measure them, right? So the case studies actually give you, this kind of a validation also about things which are implemented on ground, right? And it helps you an in-depth investigation of contemporary real life phenomena into its concept, context, and yeah. A case study research is commonly described as a form of qualitative research. So qualitative research actually gives you, like data, which directly cannot be inferred. Also, for example, like utilization of a space. Okay, so how utilization of a space is happening, can have some quantitative kind of inputs also, as well as a lot of qualitative inputs also. Okay, so this is where case studies actually help, in creating, like these qualitative, like inputs. Okay, so finally, some key characteristics. A case that is bounded or defined in time, space, and activity. A context-based study of the phenomena rather than the study of conducted in the lab or through modeling. So it's not a lab thing, here we are talking about, but we are talking about a real life thing. In-depth investigation, you can go visit, see, interact, interview, like see, observe, measure, all of those things, because it is right there in front of you, right? So that's why it is, like a very helpful. In any like a such, like a lab-based, like a thing, the limitation is it can still give you like like a simulation, like a based, like a data, but still simulation still cannot be kind of compared with the real life like a situation. Because real life situations may differ. Yeah. In case studies, you get to see multiple sources of evidences. A research question that cannot be answered using only numerical data, that also you can check, through this methodology. Yeah. So it helps with the qualitative research, and it does not totally rely on the data and statistics, though it also takes help of like a data and statistics in case study methods also. So now I'll directly go to some advantages. So what are the advantages? So case studies offer verifiable data, like like heat related stuff or anything. Like for example, anybody, if any one of you would like to share your own research, like assignment, what you are doing, I can, like explain with the help of that. So if anyone wants to like tell me, you are free to interrupt. So just for like understanding any such, like a measurement, what you want to do, you can directly observe, you can draw some results. So these are the advantages. Plus it provides facts to study because you are looking at data which was generated in real time, and that is the, like a best part. Like even in the simulation, for example, in the case of if I see our own city like Hyderabad, okay, how the, like a sun, wind, rain is like affecting our building. Okay, so simulation also can give data, but like on the ground, if you want to visit, the neighborhoods or the city, like the colonies or places, you can see, like a lot of examples. You can see multiples, like such examples, because simulation is going to give you the same results even if you change the entire like in the, like a location of the Hyderabad, like a metropolitan region. But on ground situations, might differ. For example, if you are in Isnapur area, or if you are in Sangareddy area, if you are going to the Secunderabad area, there may be some other local factors also which might affect the overall results. Okay, that's why real, like a time data actually become advantageous. Yeah, it is relevant to all stakeholders involved, since in any such, like example, there are a number of people who are involved. So it kind of like involves them in the study itself, and you can interview, you can kind of interact, you can like derive even data using all of those sources. So this is also one of the advantages. Yeah, and it involves more than just interviews and direct observation. Case histories from record database can be used with this method. Questionnaires can be distributed, etc., etc., which are like a typical like research exercises. Researchers do not need to be present at the specific location or facility to utilize the case study method. Even you can do this from a distance, or you can go to some other place and like make your study and come back. Because for every kind of a like a thing, you cannot make like a pilot like a project, right? You cannot construct a building for like a studying, for example, fire safety. If you want to study, okay, so how to undertake this? If you are aware, like like a few years back, just 2-3 years back, IT Gandhi Nagar actually like did one exercise where they constructed a building on campus. Okay, I think 2-3 story like a building, and they set it on fire. They install like a hell lot of like a sensors everywhere, inside, outside, like everywhere, and they put like this building in fire. Okay, and they observed like what is going on, what happens in a real life scenario, right? So any simulation actually cannot give you that much of like a detail, and that's why this actually technique was adopted. So this definitely kind of talks about the like a advantage of like a case study method. Yeah, it is inexpensive. You just have to go and record your observations. You do not have to kind of unnecessarily spend like a money on making things. Okay. Accessible to readers, accessible to viewers, or anybody who is interested to look under these things. A lot of details one can observe through case study like a methods. Yeah. Rare cases, yeah. So rare like a cases in this one, like case studies tend to be conducted on rare cases where large samples of similar participants are not available. For example, like buildings by Frank Gehry. Okay, they are very unique, one of a kind, but very few in the whole world. Okay, so if somebody else wants to make like any such building in their own place, okay, so definitely it requires some understanding of the existing one, and definitely this is where like a case study helps you, because like those unique things are not generally available, and people are not like like aware of it in abundance, right? So how do you do this? Definitely by case study. Yeah. As I said, like like that building was set on fire with lot of like tools and things in IT Gandhinagar. Okay, this is for like definitely making accurate scientific like experiments and data collection, because it helps you with all of those things which may be crucial for your future like studies. Novelty. Case studies can help experimenters adapt ideas and produce novel hypotheses which can be used for later like a testing, etc. also. And knowledge, of course, all of these like things add a lot of knowledge. Usually in our syllabus we ask our students like we all have done it. Okay, like a case study of Zaha Hadid buildings, Frank Gehry buildings, like a like all of those visualizations which are I think new proposals which are coming on Moon and Mars. Okay, by sitting in our own classrooms and studios. Why it is essential? Because will everybody cannot go like there, but even if you do like this study through literature based case study, okay, at least you will be knowing a lot of things, because a number of people and number of researchers have conducted like such studies on these buildings. They can be made useful for everyone. Okay. There are some disadvantages also that we will see. It can have influence factors within the data. So for like conducting any research, data is very important thing. Okay, because if your data is correct, the research findings are going to be correct. But if your data is faulty, then the whole research also may have a lot of errors, and it may not be accurate. Okay, so even in case studies also it can happen remotely, but yes, it's possible. Okay, so yeah, like the first line says every person has their own unconscious biases. Okay, So even in those buildings also, which you are taking as like a case study examples, okay, there may have been some personal preferences and all those things, which can create, some degree of bias. Okay, so one has to be careful of this thing. It takes longer to analyze the data. Well, it needs time, of course, to go to the site, right, and collect, and then come back and process and all of that. Okay, it can be an inefficient process if there are certain limitations that you are not able to collect data what you wanted to, or the things were not available, or maybe the things were not accessible, and all of those limitations. It requires a small sample size to be effective. Okay, it is a labor intensive method of data collection. It requires a lot of effort. Like when we ask our students to go for case study, I remember in my own for my like a final thesis project, I went to New Delhi to study like some buildings, and it took me almost like a kind of a month to roam around different like a cities and study different like a buildings and then come back. Okay, so it's definitely a kind of an intensive like a process. But yes, definitely a lot of advantages once you see them with your own eyes, once you are present in that premise. Okay, it helps you in multiple manners. Okay. Yeah, so that is also possible that generalization cannot be drawn like a through like a case study methods. Okay, sometimes that also be like a limitation. Yeah, biasness, we discussed, there may be like a biasness. For example, but any particular like architect's building, if you see, or the set of buildings, if you see, they come within like a similar kind of a design principle, philosophies and things. Okay, and that's going to be the kind of common unique like a factor among all of the like projects. Okay, so that's a kind of a bias. Okay, so you have to see like works of different architects also in the same typology of the building what you are studying, to counter like that biasness, right? Yeah, causality. So causality, you may be knowing, it is also very difficult to draw a definite cause effect from the case study. So cause and effect, like how it works, like a something like a leads to like a some activity which has some impact of some sort, and that led to some other kind of like activity, or maybe multiple like activities. Those may be interrelated or may not be interrelated. That may lead again back to some other thing, and all of that. So cause and effect is a very typical this thing. If you know already, you will understand. Okay, but if you do not know, maybe you can search it later. So in these kind of assignments also, there may be some sort of limitation, because causality needs a very wide kind of a platform, a map, like a systemic mapping, to actually help you understand things in its totality, right? So that cause and effect model. So in an overall sense, if you see, these case study method advantages, disadvantages offer a look at the effectiveness of this research option. With the right skill set, it can be used as an effective tool to gather rich detailed information about specific entities. Without the right skill set, the case study method becomes inefficient and inadequate. So one has to be very careful and cautious. Otherwise, it's a wonderful, like a tool. Right? So now let me give you some slides on case study functions. Firstly, the most important role it plays is that it provides efficient explanations when presumed causal links between phenomena and real life situations. So that cause and effect, like a model I just like I spoke, causality, that you can establish with this. Too complex for the length of surveys or experiment strategies are required. In other words, the characteristic of the developed theoretical framework are expressed exactly by the links between the observed phenomena and the real situations. Secondly, case studies can describe both the phenomena and real life context in which it occurred. It helps with analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. Thirdly, illustration of certain topics within an evaluation. Okay, it helps you with the like a descriptive like understanding of that. Fourth, case study strategy can be used to explore situations in which the phenomena that is being evaluated has no clear single set of outcomes. Fifth and final, The case study can be used as meta-evaluation process, which means that it can be applied when evaluating the validity of another study that requires a more complex form of data collection. The fact that multiple case studies can be chosen could suggest that the replication of the circumstances of the cases could act as a refining resource for new observations and future research works. So these are like some functions. Now let me give you some examples. So a conceptual framework of research methods. So there's a very typical one. You may be already aware. Correlational, experimental, simulation, logical augmentation, interpretive, historical, qualitative, right? So, for example, if I ask you to compare Frank Gehry and B.V. Doshi, okay, so how do you do that? Okay, so at philosophy level, then more details, of their projects, right? So, in Frank Gehry's philosophy, deconstructivism, an approach characterized by fragmentation and distortions of the traditional structures, informed by his belief that all artists should be true to themselves. In B.V. Doshi's, like a philosophy, interpretation of the essence of life according to the cyclic notion of time. In the Hindu philosophy, namely blossoming, accommodative, growing, adaptable, perceptive, to change over time, expanding, open-endedness, holistic approach, and well integrated with the surrounding. Okay, so these are the characteristics and kind of like ethos we see in his designs. Right, there are many such examples you can see on Gary's side also, and Doshi's, like a side also. You see some interiors in the planning also that is visible. Okay, in the sections, in the details, everywhere it is visible. Like how simple, like a floor of wire mesh and mortar was used to create, like this Ahmedabad Nikufa, which is there in the SEPT campus in Ahmedabad city. Okay, you may have been there. It's an interesting, like a space to, like a be in. Yeah. So if you see, this is the sketch, like a drawn, by Frank Gehry for the Guggenheim Bilbao Museum, like that project, and some of his study models. If you see the pictures and videos or maybe interaction interviews with the Frank Gehry, he shows his like a studio and his sketches and models and the things. It's a very kind of interesting thing to look at, and this is where these case studies actually help like students particularly how to undertake a design exercise, right? So you see from sketches to the real spaces, how it is transformed, more or less exactly like the same. What was envisioned was actually translated into the reality. Yeah, right. So how he came up with the like a such forms, like these like uneven surfaces, right? Right. So yeah, there are some articles also on digital freeform architecture, like how one can like involve like a computing abilities of our time, and like go for interesting like forms in the design exercises, right? So for that there are a number of like a case examples like used for this presentation purpose. I have referred like here you can see this like there are 10 cases, okay, of different like designers, different like architects from different places. Okay, so you see like when a car drives through like a tube matrix, a series of 4 skill simulations is turned out to be an interactivity form. So you see how it is changing, like these you see these curve surfaces, how it is changing, the moment it is coming into the like action. Okay, so simulation come field study, and again like combining them together, it helps you with the like a final analysis, and that will help you write like your research papers. Because research papers, one typical thing we must actually remember all the time, that there should be some novel like a thing coming out in your research paper. Okay, then only you can write a research paper. If it is a generic thing which is already known, okay, then it doesn't form like a research paper or a research article. It can be any generic like an article, but not a research thing, because research also like a like a, has one of the characteristics of being like a novel, right? So you can see like how like interrelated morphologies are simulated and then compared at the real like a life situation. You can see here 4 states of shaping and sight at an island. So how it can be simulated and can be studied on the like a site for the real life like the conditions. Yeah. With the help of some digital models, with the help of some like a small scale like a physical models. So studying both for such like a complex geometries and architecture is essential, right? So you may be doing like such assignments in your design exercise for composition, for designing, etc. Now if you see from the real life like the case studies, this is one example from Nepal. It's a school. Okay, so let me zoom this section here. It's a very interesting like a this thing. If you see, this is the like a landform, and they have kind of leveled like this portion, and they have created like this building. Okay, and in a hilltop, very little like a space is available for like students to play, right? So this is where like they have built up like a playground. If you see at the top of the roof, you see here. Yeah, see some pictures from the like a real place. Yeah, you see before construction, how the architect and the like a designers team, they visualize this at at the site itself with the like help of sand, and how like this kind of a formal language was evolved. Okay, so this as a case study like helps you understand the geography, the place, and the like a responsive architecture what you can like come up with. Another like this example is from like this is a restaurant actually, if you see, from Auckland. Okay, so in this one this wrap around like a restaurant structure was actually created around these like a tree trunks. So you see its section and the details over here. Yeah, site planning, some more sections, some more details, concept sketches. Yeah, some more details here. So you can see actually the brief was to like a design and construct like a restaurant, right? But designer, the architects actually they chose to like not cut like these trees, and they actually prepared. So you see in this layout here, these are the tall like a unique like a trees, okay, on the site, okay, around which like this whole like a design was actually created. So you see, this is the tree, the trunk, and around which like this section is actually created. Yes, more details. Yeah, another you see for case studies, like we always do like of like hot and arid regions, humid regions, like a coastal regions, mountainous regions. So this is from Jaisalmer. Jaisalmer, if you see, and these gullies, if you see, they are very uniquely like a place, and the buildings are like a placed around it. Okay, and how they offer like a cool climate, even in the like a mid of the like a very harsh like a summers, was actually like a studied by like a, most of them like architects we all study, and was how beautifully translated into this design by, like a Sangat, like a, Vivitosi's, like a office. You see this statement by architect Yatin Pandya over here. Okay. And translated into unique, like a designs here in other places also, like Ahmedabad also is a very hot and like a dry region, dry place. So how it was uniquely, like adopted over here. So again, like implementation of case study approach. So what he says, sustainability is a phenomena. It is a concept that stems from and culminates in the way of life. It is about contextual adjustments for the maximum gain with the least disturbance or imbalance. Again, modern, like a translations of the, like a same kind of a things which are, coming in Indian, like like architectural heritage for a long time, like Jalis and, like a Breeze Solil and all of these structures, if you see. Okay, so this is a modern, like a structure where it is utilizing like these lures, right? Again, one of the, like the most amazing, modern architectural examples. Here Christopher Charles Bellinger, he has utilized, like multiple, like examples, from, like Indian architecture, traditional Indian architecture in the modern, like utilization. You can see some contextual sketches. Okay, this is from CCBA. Okay. So this is how actually case study approach helps in actually bridging the old and the new, or any, like a such, like a context. So with this, I have come to the end of, like my presentation. So yeah, so I welcome if there are any questions.
Thank you, Professor, for such a nice presentation. And actually, my case study technique is more reliable and more intuitive and confidence for the researcher. You have talked about it. And many a times, any researcher will look for a case study because that gives him a lot of confidence. And once he does that, his intuition about the results and the data is more clearer than any other methods, literature or even simulation also. So you have explained it very thoughtfully and thoroughly why case study approach is one of the best approaches in research. And for a student of architecture, it is like bread and butter. For every project, we insist on case study approach, and it gives a lot of inputs to the researcher. So, very thoughtful presentation that you have done. Thank you so much.
Yes, definitely. Case studies are actually tried and tested on like a methods, and
Yes.
these are part of our curriculum also. Like we take our students on study tours, like a curriculum stipulated, like a study tours. So that is precisely meant for giving them this exposure, like how, like a buildings can be, how the spaces are when we are talking about human scale or grandeur scale. So how does a grandeur scale actually, like feels like, unless and until we stand, like in front of a fort or Rashtrapati Bhavan or something, we cannot get that.
Yes.
So case studies definitely help into, like these things. So coming down from those traditional methods, actually today we have, with the help of technology, a lot of tools, like equipment and other things for our, like a use, which we can make use to even quantify these, like observations and findings and make use in our, like studies, in our research. Like for example, when we talk about, like the buildings of Jaisalmer being, like cool, even in the hot summers. Okay. So there are, like tools kept, in each and every quarter of the, like the whole Haveli. That as the sun rises in the morning and it sets in the, like the evening. Okay. What is the temperature observation, like happening in all of those, like spaces? So we have been traditionally knowing that yes, they are cool, but how much? So in the quantitative terms, like that is also being done in today's time.
Yeah.
So one of the advantages of in these days, like how case studies can help, us in the data wise, like observations also.
Yes.
Like in American, yeah, like in the American society, if you see, they actually practice and they have like rules and regulations where they check the efficiency of buildings very, very precisely with the tools.
Yes.
And if the building is not performing as it was promised, they can sue the architect and the designer. So in that kind of situations, it becomes very important
Yes.
to go for exactly what we are going to promise, how much the building is going to deliver.
And actually, for the simulation also, a case study would definitely be the foundation, a better foundation for simulation. And the application of technology, AR and VR, will give better results when you actually do a case study. Then all these will definitely be more effective. So, and as you were rightly telling, the local conditions actually affect, and in simulations, we are not sure about the local conditions. So, so anyway, the first-hand information is definitely first-hand information, and it becomes very strong data set for any research.
Simulations actually, nowadays we are using AR, VR. And that's definitely an kind of like a new tool which is very helpful in recreating like these spaces and these like experiences like remotely. But still, I think the feel of like being at the sunset at the beach, or seeing the Taj Mahal with their own eyes, right? It has its own charm. So similarly, this case study approach also, because once we go to the place, we see a number of things.
Yes. True.
Like, like recently we made a trip, with our students to a nearby, like historical temple. So when they saw the, like a stone and how it is carved, and the parts of it and how they are connected, how they are joined. Okay, and it is standing for like hundreds of years, for so long, right? So that's a unique experience in itself.
Yes, true. That is true.
Thank you very much, sir. I had specifically made my time to attend your session as expected. It was a good session for me. Like your approach about diagnosis before surgery, sort of an approach which actually is an important thing. You had stressed upon it. What I also believe is like the case study criteria or the case study, how exactly you are looking as a case study is more important than the results what we get. So unless and until we have that qualitative approach, we cannot get the real extract of what we had learned from the case study. That is very well elaborated. And I feel very jealous about the students because at this early semesters, they are getting to know all what is required for them to go to in a good direction. Actually, I don't know how do they perceive this information to be, but this was a great thing, and I would love to collaborate with you if you have time for the next semesters also, where we can stress about more about case studies, looking case studies from a different perspective. The case study for a student looks very different in terms of plan, section, elevation. But what I was also trying to do as an academician was to make them understand the essence of the case study. Maybe your input through design, when we do a design studio, maybe 1 or 2 lectures of you would make a lot of difference in terms of the approach, what I feel. Getting back, it was a nice session as expected. Thank you very much for this wonderful presentation.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for the kind words. Definitely, like I'm open for anything.
Yes, Shamant, actually you have to introduce yourself. That would give a better understanding about what you are looking forward.
Yeah, actually, like when I joined, so I didn't wanted to interrupt. Actually, I'm Shamant here, an associate professor in Geetham School of Architecture. I'm very new to academics, a new instance, 2.5 years old to academics. Prior before that, I was working as an architect with Hafiz contractor and then with Infosys for development of the Pocharam campus. So in fact, I heard about you from Srinivas Murthy also when we were discussing about climate change and all this, then your reference also has come. In this spanning career of 20 years, like we had been always working on sustainable buildings. And I was also involved in this both Infosys campus making a net zero campus. So that way, yeah. So when we discuss about this, like when you were building your IIT also, like your engineers from infra team had come to study our buildings to make it a radiant cooling building and all this stuff. So that's my background. And I joined Geetham around 2.5 years before. So I'm dealing with design and working drawings with the students. So that's basic background of mine.
Wonderful. Good to know that, yeah, net zero building, I think that is being done at Geetham. It's very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, slowly, I think this awareness is coming up. Today it is optional. I'm sure like very soon it will be a mandatory thing for everyone. And it should become, I think, mandatory. Because on sustainability parameters also, I think we are running out of time.
Yeah. Sir, actually 10 years back, people thought that sustainability is a making a building sustainable is like adding some more capital, but they have realized that the interest rate of return is so much that sustainability, net zero buildings and green buildings, they're all very cost effective buildings. And they actually save you a lot of money in the long run. And they have come and come to that realization. And so everyone is, even any small residence, if we tell the owner that you have to adopt these sustainable features and it will positively impact your building maintenance and the quality of build space. Everyone is, because of the awareness, everyone is being positive for all this. And everyone is actually, the COVID period saw what is bad for people, right? So the whole global, and they saw the positive things happening after 2 years of less pollution because of lockdowns and all that. And so people's confidence in sustainability has improved drastically. And maybe the case study approach, because everyone realized they have saw what is real about the sustainable
So in the
building.
real life, yes. For a
Yes,
small
real.
break, like it feels like, yes, nature actually has like its own healing capacity.
Yes, healing
So we do
capacity.
not have to do anything. We just only one thing, we should not disturb it.
Disturb it,
We
yes.
heal it on its own.
Yes, yes. So even the regular lighting, fans, electrical also, everyone is previously, when we asked them to go for star rated, they were like a little hesitant. Why should we do? But now everyone is like LED lighting, star rated equipment, and even low VOC paints. Everyone is like adapting to these sustainable features, and they have realized that fact. And maybe because they have seen the results, and all the institutions, definitely institutions which have a lot of capital invested, so when they start demonstrating these technologies, right, so they are able to give a positive impact on the whole society. Yeah. Yes, Sapani, anyone else?
Any question, Muktesh sir, or from the students? Okay, sir, then we will conclude the session for today.
Sure, sure.
Thank you, sir, for being here. And we would obviously expect you to come once or twice to our department, make a visit, and we will conduct some workshops with you.
Sure. Thank you so much for the invitation. Namaste all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your very insightful presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks a lot.